Assalamu alaikum everyone, this is Ayman Nazir and welcome to Knowledge Realm. So students, we are studying Pakistan affairs and the topic that we're going to cover today is Wavell Plan and Simla Conference of 1945. So let's get started. Starting with the brief introduction of this plan, students, Wavell Plan was actually a plan presented by British government to form an interim arrangements in India. Students, we all know that before the end of World War II, British government had been convinced by the Indian leaders to transfer the responsibility of governing India to Indians. And British government agreed that okay, now we will give independence to India, we will leave India, but before that definitely we have to make some interim government. That government will take care of the matters and then we will start work on the independence process. Alright, so this was just an effort to form interim arrangements in India. It was an effort to make a constituent body, and for the first time British government agreed for an executive council consisting of Indians only except for Governor General and the Commander-in-Chief. I mean that British government had agreed that okay, now we will reorganize the Executive Council of Governor General, but this time only the Governor General and Commander-in-Chief would be from British people and all the other members, other representatives would be Indians because we want to transfer the responsibility to Indians. But students, conflicts raised between Muslims and Hindus on the question of parity between them in the Executive Council, and there was a conflict on the question that who would represent Muslims in the Executive Council. So this conflict led to the failure of this plan, and this plan the Wavell could not complete this plan and this plan was not implemented because Muslims and Hindus could not make any consensus between them, and it ended in fiasco. And this failure actually led to the general elections of 1945 and strengthening of All India Muslim League in India. So this was the brief introduction. Let's study this plan in detail. Studying the background of the society, what was happening in the society at the time that led to the proposal of this Wavell Plan in 1945. Students, we all know that in 1945, world was plunged into World War II and Britain was one of the belligerent that was fighting World War II. Britain was fighting for democracy in Europe that made Indians question the double standards of British people. Indian leaders questioned, they said that okay, now we have realized how double standard you are. I mean, in Europe you are fighting for democracy, for right of self-determination, you are fighting for them, and you are saying that no, Germany should not expand itself, Germany should be limited to its border, and here in India you have colonized us for more than 100 years. You are ruling over us and you are not letting us determine ourselves. Where is our right of self-determination? Why can we not rule our own world? So they said that okay, now we have realized your double standards. And they started protesting. They started claiming, they started fighting for their right of self-determination. Then students, British also realized that okay, now we cannot rule India anymore and we are compelled to leave this country. British also started efforts to decolonize India. Then in 1942, Cripps proposals were proposed, but these proposals were rejected by All India Muslim League and Congress also. If you want to study Cripps proposal, you can definitely go to my channel. And in a Pakistan Affairs playlist, there you can study all the events of pre-partition history of Pakistan in detail. Then students, after the failure of Cripps' proposal in 1942, British introduced another new plan called Wavell Plan. Students, Lord Wavell was the Viceroy of India at the time and also the Governor General of India, and L.S. Emery was the Secretary of State for India. They announced that the government will make some interim arrangements about the reorganization of Executive Council of Governor General. They announced that the Executive Council of Governor General would be reorganized, and after that we will start the work for independence of India. Lord Wavell gave a plan that consisted of 2 points. He said that the Executive Council would be reconstituted, and according to the demands of Indians, all members of the council except Governor General and Commander-in-Chief would be Indians. I mean, all the representative, all the members of Executive Council of Governor General would be Indians, but Governor General and Commander-in-Chief would be British. Another point, the Governor General would convene a meeting of all the stakeholders of India, that is, all the political leaders of political parties, All India Muslim League, Congress, all the chief ministers of provinces, and all the political leaders of opposing parties, and everyone. He would convene a meeting of all the stakeholders of India to solicit the names of members of the council. And this meeting was known as the Simla Conference. Then invitations were given to leaders of political parties. Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah accepted the invitation readily, but Gandhi, he did not accept the invitation. He said that he does not represent Congress, Indian National Congress. He was not a leader of Congress. He was a leader of people. He was revered by people. So he said that I am not the representative of Congress, so I would not take part in this conference. He did not accept invitation, but Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah readily accepted the invitation because he was the leader of Muslim and also the All India Muslim League. Students, Lord Wavell gave his plan that consisted of 2 points. First point was about the reorganization of the Executive Council of Governor General, and the second point was about the Simla Conference. He announced that we will convene a meeting, that was the Simla Conference of 1945, and in that meeting we will ask all the political parties to bring a list of candidates for the members of Executive Council of Governor General. Then students, that conference started at the Viceroyal Lodge in Simla on June 25, 1945. Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who was representing All India Muslim League, he was the president of All India Muslim League, he was representing Muslims. He gave his viewpoint. Abul Kalam Azad, who was representing Indian National Congress, he also gave his viewpoint, and both these leaders explained the positions of their respective parties. Then students, controversy arose on the question of parity between Muslims and Hindus in the Executive Council. The nomination of the representatives of various minorities also became a bone of contention. Indian National Congress was of the view that the Muslims who would represent Muslims in that Executive Council would go from Indian National Congress. I mean, he said that the Governor General should select Muslims from Indian National Congress. But Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, he was of the view that only All India Muslim League represents the Muslims of India. And if anyone wants to represent Muslims in Executive Council of Governor General, he should be from All India Muslim League and not the Indian National Congress. He said that the Muslims of All India Muslim League, the leaders of All India Muslim League, would become a part of Executive Council of Governor General, and they would represent Muslims in the Executive Council. This was the main problem. Now students, let's see how Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah reacted to this Wavell Plan. Well, he rejected the plan outrightly. Why he rejected the plan? He rejected to submit the list of nominees for representation of Muslims in the council on 2 grounds. First, students, he demanded that all Muslims in the council should be from All India Muslim League. He was of the claim that All India Muslim League is the only political party in India that honestly represents Muslim. So there is no question on the representation of Muslims in the Executive Council. I mean, All India Muslim League represents Muslims. So if anyone has to represent Muslims in the Executive Council, he should be from All India Muslim League and not the Indian National Congress. So this was his main grievance. He said that no, you should not let other political parties submit the list of nominees for representation of Muslims. There should be no question of list of nominees. If you want to select any Muslim to represent Muslims of India, you should select that Muslim from All India Muslim League only. This was his viewpoint. Then another point, there were no provisions in the Wavell Plan regarding the time of interim arrangements. Now, students, Qadi Muhammad Ali Jinnah was a very witty person, and he questioned that you are not telling that for how long this interim arrangement would last. I mean, what is the guarantee tomorrow in the future you would say that let's just make this interim arrangement permanent? Then Muslims would have no choice. I mean, then Muslims would have to give up on their right of independence, right of self-determination. You are not telling for how long this government would govern. You should tell us for how long this interim arrangement would last and when you would start preparation for independence. So there is no provision related to time frame. So on this ground he rejected the plan. Then students, Qaid insisted that instead of seeking temporary solutions, permanent solutions should be implemented. He reiterated the demand of Pakistan and rejected Wavell Plan outrightly. Students, Simla conference ended in fiasco and Wavell Plan could not be implemented. Qadi Muhammad Ali Jinnah actually wrote to Wavell asking him to choose Muslims from All India Muslim League only. But Lord Wavell rejected the demand and asked Qadi Muhammad Ali Jinnah to submit the list of nominees. But he did not want to submit the list of nominees. Qadi Muhammad Ali Jinnah rejected to submit the list, and Wavell chose 4 Muslims from All India Muslim League. And I don't know from where he chose the rest of the Muslims, but from All India Muslim League he chose only 4 Muslims. That was not accepted by Qadi Muhammad Ali Jinnah. All India Muslim League under Qadi Muhammad Ali Jinnah rejected to cooperate, and Lord Wavell was then compelled to abandon his plan. So Simla conference ended in a fiasco. Students, now let's study how Simla conference impacted the political activities of India. First of all, students, it became the reason for criticism on Qadi Muhammad Ali Jinnah. People started criticizing Qadi Muhammad Ali Jinnah for the failure of the conference. People believed that it was the intransigence of Qadi Muhammad Ali Jinnah that led to the failure of the conference, because Qadi Muhammad Ali Jinnah rejected Wavell Plan because he was adamant that only Muslims from All India Muslim League should represent Muslims in the Executive Council of Governor General. He believed that no other party should have the right to represent Muslims in the Executive Council of Governor General. Only All India Muslim League is loyal to Muslims, and All India Muslim League should represent Muslims in the Executive Council. On the other hand, students, it was a blessing in disguise for Muslims of India. It led to the strengthening of All India Muslim League and Qadi Muhammad Ali Jinnah. It asserted that Qadi Muhammad Ali Jinnah is the sole leader and All India Muslim League is the sole representative of Muslims. This is the party that is loyal to Muslims of India. Then students, another good thing, Simla conference, the failure of Simla conference rejected the claim that Muslims are a handful of minority. It rejected the claim and it asserted that no, Muslims are not a handful of minority. They are a very strong nation and a separate nation in India. And if you want to implement a plan, you will have to bring around Muslims. You will have to make consensus with Muslims. Without the consensus of Muslims, you cannot implement any plan. That was the thing that happened with Wavell Plan. I mean, Wavell Plan was rejected by Muslims and the plan could not complete. The plan could not be implemented just because Muslims rejected that. So after this, people started believing that, okay, if you want to complete successfully a plan and if you want to implement, you will have to make consensus with Muslims. All India Muslim League earned trust of Muslims that led to the victory of All India Muslim League in general elections. After this, students, after the failure of this plan, government was pressurized to hold general elections, and in that general elections, All India Muslim League swept all the Muslim seats in General Assembly and captured 428 out of 492 Muslim seats in provincial legislature. So this was a great victory for All India Muslim League. All India Muslim League legally became the sole representative of Muslims of India, because then after that it started representing Muslims in General Assembly of India, and it started strengthening its fight for Muslims of India. So I would say that the failure of Simla conference was actually a blessing for Muslims, because it led to general elections of 1945, and in those general elections All India Muslim League strengthened. So this is the end of this lecture. This was a very one of the tiny lectures, tiny topics of the syllabus of Pakistan Affairs. This is the end of this lecture. I hope that all of you now understand what was this Wavell Plan, what were the main points, what happened at the time in India. I hope that all of this now makes sense. Thank you so much for listening to the lecture. Don't forget to like this lecture, don't forget to subscribe the channel, and don't forget to share this with your fellow CSS aspirants. Thank you so much, and Allah Hafiz.